So far, you've seen a number of videos. You've probably seen the introduction to AP151, and you've probably watched the tour of your Canvas page for the lecture part of 151. And perhaps you've also seen the Proctorio video. Now we're really going to get going on physiology. I've told you before that studying physiology is different. When I say that studying physiology is different, what I mean is that you can't really memorize it. You can memorize anatomy. You can memorize a lot of things, but it is much less effective to try to memorize physiology. So what's the alternative to memorizing? The alternative to memorizing is understanding. And this video is going to focus on one of the central keys to understanding physiology, okay? Remember that when it comes time to take one of your exams in physiology or in the future in your nursing program, your PA program, your PT program, you need to understand, okay? Try not to use the rote memorization approach. And if you're not able to explain the story to your friend or mom or sister or whatever, then you're not ready for the exam. There aren't any essay questions on the online version of the course. Now, one of the central concepts to physiology and to medicine and to people being sick or being well, to people responding to a medication or not, to the way we respond to the stresses of exercise or not, is this concept of homeostasis. Now, the word homeostasis gets used a lot in the study of physiology. Once you get over into a medical program, however, you probably won't see the word homeostasis as often as you will see the words compensation or feedback or regulation. But they're all related concepts. The idea is that in order for life to survive, it's got to be in the form of cells. You learned that in 150. And in order for any individual cell to be alive, its environment has to be compatible with its proteins, its enzymes, its cell membrane, and all of that. That means every individual cell, in order to stay alive, has to have water around it, has to be at the right temperature, has to have the right amount of sodium on the outside, right amount of potassium on the outside, has to be in the proper pH. Now, the simplest forms of life were something like a single-celled organism living in the ocean. And the ocean is a very stable environment. Once you're about 3 feet below the surface of the waters of the ocean, the temperature hardly changes day, night, even summer, winter. The pH basically doesn't change at all. The salt concentration doesn't change. The the osmolality doesn't change. And that was swell back in the day, but now we live on land. So all of these cells right here, they need to be kept in an environment that is not too hot, not too cold, just right. It has to be kept not too acid, not too alkaline, just right. It has to be not too much sodium, not too little sodium, just right. Keeping everything here just right is the purpose of physiology, and bringing things back to just right when they've gone wonky is the purpose of medicine. This word homeostasis is the word that means a state of dynamic constancy. My body temperature should be right around 98.6. Is it always 98.6? No. Sometimes it's down at 98, sometimes it's up at 99. There's this range of normal, dynamic constancy, constant within this sort of Goldilocks zone. You'll see that the pH of our blood is right around 7.4. Is it always 7.4? No. It can go down to 7.35 and up to 7.45, but if it goes above 7.45, things go wrong, right? So we've got these narrow windows that everything needs to stay. I think of them as the Goldilocks zone because back when I was a kid, we learned this story about Goldilocks and the three bears. And that blonde girl, she just broke into that bear's house and sat on their chairs. And well, look up Goldilocks, okay? Now, whenever we talk about homeostasis, we talk about negative feedback loops. You know, I'm going to show you the image from the textbook. It's a very good image, but I think it makes this concept more complicated than it needs to be, okay? A negative feedback loop is exactly like a thermostat. So in your house, what makes your heater turn on? Right now, probably the heater's not turning on at all. It's pretty hot right now. But what makes it turn on? When the thermostat in your house measures that the temperature is too cold, then that thermostat will start a mechanism that'll send a signal to the heater that will turn the heater on. Now, once the thermostat turns the heater on, does it stay on for the rest of all eternity? No. Okay, what makes the heater turn off? The heater will turn off when that same thermostat measures that the house is warm enough, and then it will stop the machine that is heating up the house. It will turn off the heater. This is a negative feedback loop. This is just so valuable for you to know. Let's start with just a physiology example. What makes you shiver? You shiver when your hypothalamus, part of your brain, measures that your body temperature is too cold. If your hypothalamus measures that your body temperature is too cold, it will send out a signal that will turn on a mechanism that will start you to warming up, shivering. Shivering causes all of your muscles to contract just a little bit, so you don't actually move, but all of your muscles are doing this contraction thing that generates heat, and as the heat gets generated, your hypothalamus will measure that your body temperature's back to normal and shut off the heater, the shivering, okay? Now, why is this so useful? Why am I saying it right now? You are going to be asked to master a tremendous number of physiological mechanisms, and you're going to want to memorize them. And I keep telling you, it's very hard to do that. However, if you just know a little bit about something, it is easy for you to predict what starts that mechanism and what stops it. For example, if I told you that the heater in your house, when it's on, it generates heat through the ducts, you would know, oh, that is a machine that goes on when it's too cold and goes off once it's warm enough. You don't have to memorize it, right? In the future, if you can remember antidiuretic hormone, just remember antidiuretic hormone is going to keep your body from losing water, then you would say to yourself, well, when do I want my body to not lose water? I want my body to not lose water when I'm getting dehydrated, right? Because then you would want the machine that keeps your body from losing more water to turn on. When would you want the antidiuretic hormone to turn off, to be gone? When you just drank a whole bunch of water, right? Now, yes, you can memorize all that, but if you just start thinking in terms of negative feedback loops, you don't have to memorize it. It'll just make sense, okay? What will cause the body to make the heart beat harder? Well, if you remember that when the heart beats harder, it'll raise your blood pressure, then you would know that low blood pressure is one of the things that will make your heart beat harder and faster. Okay, you don't have to memorize it. You learn a certain number of things, and then you put them together into negative feedback loop stories. Okay, now this image from the textbook, it's a very good image, but it makes this whole thing too complicated, right? So there is a controlled variable. What is the pH of your body? What is the temperature of your body? What is the osmolarity or saltiness of your body, right? And that gets measured by some kind of a receptor somewhere. Your blood pressure gets measured by mechanoreceptors in your carotid artery and your aorta. Your body temperature gets measured up there in your hypothalamus. Your blood sugar levels get measured in your pancreas, right? There've got to be receptors somewhere. And once they measure that, hey, something's not in my normal range, not in my Goldilocks zone, then it sends a message to somewhere, okay? And that message receiving area can be lots of different things, okay? But ultimately, it's up to this central system to send out a command for a response. So in the case of our body temperature being too cold, our hypothalamus measured it was too cold, and the hypothalamus actually is the control center that sends out the command that is going to tell you to shiver, and all of your muscles shivering, those will be the effectors, and that will start to generate heat. And when you get back into the Goldilocks zone, then that heat is normal, your body temperature is normal, the receptors go, oh, hey, it's normal, let's turn off the shivering, okay? There won't be any questions on your exam that ask you to identify what is the controlled variable in this situation. This is a good chart. It just, sometimes the more you talk about something, the more complicated you make a concept, all right? So in the future, when you are learning that, that when the heart beats faster and harder, it will cause an increase in cardiac output, and an increase in cardiac output raises your blood pressure. Then if I ask you, okay, your patient is losing blood and their blood pressure is dropping, what do you expect to happen to the heart rate? You would go, well, it should go up. You don't have to memorize it. If you understand things and you know negative feedback loops, you would understand that when my patient is losing blood internally, his blood pressure will go down, and the negative feedback loops will try to get the blood pressure back up into the Goldilocks zone. And how will they do that? One way will be to make the heart beat harder and faster. That's an example, all right? There are two agents of control. We've got two communication systems in the human body. The nervous system is one of our communication systems. And so there are times when they're like with blood pressure is measured by mechanoreceptors, and that signal gets sent by the nervous system to your brainstem so that your brainstem can send out a command to make your heart beat harder and faster if your blood pressure is too low, right? So that's one agent of control. The other is the endocrine system. If your blood sugar levels are too high, there are cells in your pancreas that measure blood sugar levels, and when it's too high, they release insulin, and when insulin goes out, it will act to bring your blood sugar levels back down. So two ways these homeostatic mechanisms get controlled through the nervous system and through the endocrine system, okay? So almost all of what you study in physiology and medicine are these examples of homeostasis. How do we keep this organism constant as life would have been in the ancient oceans, right? So all of these are examples of that. By the way, in the introductory video, do you remember the 5 words you were supposed to remember, right? Give it some thought. How many do you remember? Well, the story I told was that my grandfather and I caught a fish. Grandpa put it in a red wagon that he tied to a kite, and the kite pulled the red wagon back to a church, right? So the names were fish, red, grandfather, kite, church, right? You probably still remembered all of them because of this silly story, even though you have spent literally no time trying to keep that in your brain. That's an example that the human brain likes stories. Turn all of what you are going to learn in this course into stories, like the one I told about how when your body temperature is too cold, the hypothalamus measures it, right? I'm not saying it's an interesting story, but it's a story the more you can make those stories vivid to yourself, then you will remember the physiology without even trying. And you will see that when I talk about the endocrine system, I think about them as people, right? Because that makes my stories more vivid in my mind and I remember them more easily. All right, we will start on chemistry with the next video.